Hello everyone. You will now hear a brief summary of the film Outlaw King. Enjoy. 1304. When the King of Scotland died, the nobility asked the King of England to choose a successor. Instead, he seized power himself and occupied the country. The Scots rebellion was suppressed. Robert the Bruce, along with the other lords, swore allegiance to King Edward I of England, vowing never to take up arms against him again. Edward, in turn, promised the Scottish lords the return of their confiscated lands. However, as long as the English viceroy, Emer de Lance, rules the country, the king's son Prince Edward reminded Robert of how they fought as children. And the English are always lost. Why don't they fight right now? The prince went on the attack and started talking about William Eulis, a folk hero, and the last rebel now hiding in the woods. Robert had gotten quite drunk, but he still wouldn't give in to Edward. The king stopped the duel and ordered his son to approach him. "When will you grow up?" Robert insisted on our duel. The last petitioner, James Douglas, came to the king. His father was tortured to death in the Tower. His lands were confiscated, and the king has no intention of returning them to his son, a vile traitor. Douglas was simply thrown out of his tent. The siege of the last castle is underway right now. The local lord surrendered long ago, but the king rejected his surrender. Did he spend 3 months building the gigantic catapult? For nothing. I'm proud of you, Robert. You had the courage to stand up to me and the wisdom to submit that evening. The king held a feast. He gave the hand of his goddaughter, Elizabeth, to Robert the Bruce. This marriage symbolizes the union of the two countries. Robert the Elder hopes that his son will eventually receive the crown of Scotland. Elizabeth learned that Robert's first wife had died, giving birth to his daughter. The bride and groom saw each other for the first time. The first thing Elizabeth did was meet her stepdaughter, Marjorie, soon. Bruce and Elizabeth were married. A feast was held, and when it came to an end, it was time for the newlyweds to consummate their marriage. Thank you for enduring this evening. I know it wasn't easy. Rest. How quickly are you well? You know better, Chemies. The people complain about high taxes, but nothing can be done. The king needs compensation for the rebellion. English soldiers have arrived here to deal with the discontented. Elizabeth stood up for the common people. Robert was amazed at her courage. You acted very bravely today. Anything else? No. Then good night. Ready. Robert the Elder recalls how he and the King of England went on crusade. They were best friends, but now the old man realized he had made a mistake in trusting the vile Edward. Robert the Elder died after burying his father. Robert the Bruce arrived at the port to oversee the shipment of tribute to England. Suddenly a commotion erupted. A crowd gathered around a piece of human flesh. It was the right side of the body of William Eulis, the leading fighter for Scottish independence. He had recently been drawn and quartered. The English ordered the people to disperse. Riots broke out. One of the soldiers was stabbed to death. Robert was so impressed that evening he decided to urgently speak with his brothers, first driving away his English wife. We swore an oath on King Edward's Bible. It will have to be broken. Ulysses is dead. The people are taking up arms. There will be no peace. They must gather an army and win over as many lords as possible. Elizabeth overheard the conversation and told Robert that no matter what, she would always be with him, with her husband, and that he could trust her. Robert's first meeting was with Lord Comyn, the second claimant to the Scottish throne. A man convinces a rival to temporarily set aside his ambitions and defend the country, but they've already fought for 8 years. The people are tired of war. Moreover, Comyn plans to report the traitor Edward. After that, the crown will definitely be his. The lords were on holy ground. This was a terrible crime, but Robert couldn't allow the rebellion to end before it even began. He then sought support from the church, and the clergy agreed to support Robert as their king. Edward I was furious upon learning of the new rebellion. How could these Scots have gotten to him? The prince asked to be entrusted with dealing with Robert. The king declared Bruce an outlaw, and his son would raise the banner of war. Meanwhile, the Scottish lords were deciding what to do. Many refused to support Robert because of Comyn's vile murder in the temple. Those who remained swore allegiance to him. But the one who was most pleased with the new uprising was James Douglas, who was waiting for Robert by the road and immediately bowed before him. He intends to reclaim his lands and his good name. How lucky we are, get in line. The king blessed his son and sent him off to war. Let the cider be the last unanswered. At the same time, Robert the Bruce was quickly crowned to make everything legitimate. God save the king. Your Majesty. Robert swore to serve the Scottish people, and Prince Edward swore by the swans to avenge the desecration of his oath. Robert was informed that the viceroy was gathering an army. The overconfident Valence intends to fight Robert even before the prince's army arrives. You killed my brother-in-law and made my sister a widow. I look forward to the fight. To avoid a massacre, the king offered to settle the matter with violence. In single combat, he is a bloodthirsty beast. Is this a good idea? I will sort it out myself. They agreed on tomorrow. So today everyone drank and made merry. Robert took his wife and daughter with him. On the campaign, Elizabeth decided the time had finally arrived to consummate their marriage. After their wedding night, Robert asked his wife to take care of Margaret if he died tomorrow. However, they still had to make it to tomorrow. The vile English fired fire arrows into the camp, setting the tents ablaze. Then the infantry burst in. Robert ordered his younger brother, Neil, to take his wife and daughter to the safety of Lord Fraser. The King of Scotland returned to join the battle with his men. Douglas was fighting especially fiercely. The Scots, unfortunately, were forced to retreat in the morning. Valence ordered all the prisoners to be killed. The first battle was lost. The survivors were deciding where to go next. My faithful friend Angus suggested hiding on the islands. We have no choice. 50 men against the most powerful army in the world. Suddenly, Lord MacDougall and his detachment blocked the road. Robert invited him to join them. Carmen was my cousin, you are not our king. It seemed the king would now have to fight against his own people, but MacDougall allowed him to proceed. Elizabeth was met and sheltered by the hospitable Lord Fraser. Meanwhile, Prince Edward arrived in Scotland with his army. He began burning villages and killing those who had supported the rebellion on the shore. All but one of the boats were rotten, so the rebels would have to reach the island one by one. Having disembarked the king and the first group, Angus went for the rest. Suddenly Robert saw MacDougall's men, who had decided to attack them after all, but to do it as cowardly as possible. The small force, commanded by James Douglas, was forced to fight back. They waded into the water to avoid being surrounded on all sides. Angus rowed up in a boat to lead at least some of his men away. Alex Bruce, Robert's younger brother, was killed with a blow to the back. The body had to be dumped in the river, as the place was essential for the living. Douglas slit MacDougall's throat and was the last to cling to the escaping boat. The prince pounced on Valence. How had he managed to miss Bruce? After all, he was their main target. Although there was no news of Robert, they had found his wife and daughter. An English army galloped to Fraser's castle. The lord tried to buy Elizabeth and Margaret time to hide, then opened the doors to the invaders. Robert's younger brother Neil gathered that the women had left the castle several days earlier. Unfortunately, Edward's men had already caught them. The prince ordered the traitor hanged and personally disemboweled Neil. The future ruler is far worse than Edward I, for he knows no mercy. He even slit Lord Fraser's throat. Bruce's lands were plundered. His wife and daughter were imprisoned in an English fortress. Robert met with the island's Lord Mackinnon. A brave warrior, fought shoulder to shoulder with William Ewells. How many men do you have? 40. I wish you luck with all my heart. The king is sure that in time Mackin, he will change his mind well, at least in the lands of Red Angus and Morata. My beloved, I carried you with difficulty. I said 3 weeks, and it's already 5 months. Douglas has taken a fancy to Angus's daughter. In the morning, the warriors began training the men to fight. Well, bam. Make advances to my daughter again, and I'll cut off your balls and feed them to the Today fish. The captive will be separated. The nuns are taking the girl to a convent, but what will happen to Elizabeth is unknown. Despite the ban, Douglas continued to see Angus's daughter. albeit with a different one. But Red has other things on his mind now. He learned that Fraser's castle had fallen. All the men were executed. Bruce's family was taken captive. You wanted to be king, now you are. That is the price. Robert realized it was time to act. He returned to the mainland to begin a guerrilla war. The rebels stopped the cart of a faithful servant and hid in it under the logs. This way, they were able to sneak into Robert's captured castle and detected a sentry spotted you and Bruce. But he shot him with an arrow. Robert and Douglas slaughtered those inside the castle. They managed to open the gates to let the rest of the Scots in. They quickly slaughtered all the invaders. Robert ordered his family castle to be burned so that the enemy would get nothing. In this way, they will capture one castle after another. Douglas wanted to recapture his father's castle himself. 5 strong warriors would be enough for him. Douglas waited until the enemy soldiers gathered in the church for mass and then carried out a massacre there. He took great pleasure in cutting down all the Englishmen. Finally, he is home. I drank this water. Poison it. Douglas invited servants to the castle to feast on a delicious meal and take all his possessions. According to plan, the Lord burned his castle. That same night, Edward I was informed of what was happening. His son had failed to control the rebellion after all, and had failed him more and more. People were pledging allegiance to the King of Scotland. One young man even managed to retain his crown. Elizabeth was allowed to meet her parents. The prince immediately offered her the chance to renounce her title as Queen of Scots. This was her last chance for salvation. Quote, calm down. Robert will die soon and you will go home. Quote, Elizabeth refused. Then she was thrown into a cage and suspended over a precipice. Robert believed they were strong enough to give the English a direct fight. He had just devised a plan to counter their cavalry. King Edward's patience had run out. He set off again for Scotland to engage the enemy army. However, the old man could not withstand another campaign and fell ill. Death is near. Edward ordered his son to boil his body and take his bones with him to every battle. I never imagined you at the head of an army. Edward told his dying father that he had always been stronger than him and that the whole world would soon know it. Keep it here, shall we not honor his wish? No, respect mine. King Edward II once again took command of the army. Robert chose marshy ground for the upcoming battle. He also ordered his men to whittle stakes. The Scots will plant them in the dug trenches. The king labors in the mud along with everyone else. Douglas blocked the road to the King of England, threw down his gauntlet, and announced that Robert would be waiting tomorrow at the hill. Valence is confident of victory, for they have 3,000 mounted warriors, while Bruce's army is only 500 men. Moreover, he will not use horses. That night, Lord Mackinnon knelt before him. He apologized for doubting his king. The man brought 40 more warriors. Did you hear? Edward didn't survive the campaign. His son was far more dangerous. The day of the decisive battle had arrived. Robert saw 3,000 experienced knights ahead. Edward convinced the warriors that this rebel was planning to take over England. That's why they must stop him. Valen commanded the attack. God is with us. The cunning Scots stood their ground and waited for the cavalry to close the distance. They retreated, allowing the riders to fall to the mobs with stakes. Those who managed to jump over were stabbed with spears. The knights froze in place. Archers immediately began to target them. The English in their heavy armor were unwieldy. Bruce's army held the center firmly. So Valence ordered the knights to outflank them. However, the horses immediately got stuck in the swamp. The horsemen were forced to dismount. Edward ordered the rest of his army to follow him in search for Bruce. The battlefield descended into chaos. Eventually, the young king also fell from his horse. He was forced to share in the carnage, just like his sworn enemy. Valence realized there was no victory and ordered his army to retreat. The Scots shouted and celebrated their victory. It turned out the English had forgotten their king. Another duel began between him and Robert. They wounded each other, but ultimately the Scottish king emerged victorious. He did not finish off his exhausted enemy. Edward began to cry for help and then vomited. Robert the Bruce allowed him to return to England. The king bowed over the dying youth who held his crown. This battle became a turning point in Robert's struggle for the Scottish kingdom. Soon Robert and Elizabeth were united. The Queen was exchanged for English prisoners. Their descendant James VI would become king of both Scotland and England. 300 years later,